say that while Tenet's box office numbers are a disappointment, it certainly has delivered as a topic of conversation. So many nuances to discuss. I can't wait to go over this with you. Oh, it's going to be fascinating. I also want to say before we get started that some of you are taking this a bit personally. You're like, is this some kind of reckoning on Nolan as a filmmaker? You know, like, why are people trying to kill movie theaters? People are just trying not to get killed themselves and to find a way for Hollywood to survive this pandemic. You got to stay liquid, man. You got to be able to roll with the punches. I think that if you're, really stuck in stone during this time period, you're not going to do well. So, as we've been saying, pivot. So I really think that's the big lesson here. So as we go over this isn't to make anyone look bad. This isn't trying to kill an entire industry, which is movie theaters. It's just the reality that we currently find ourselves living in, which is a pandemic. People are like, I refuse to acknowledge that there's a pandemic. Well, you can't do that because there is one. So just keep that in mind while we go over this. I'm seeing, because that's kind of the reactions I've seen a little bit on Twitter. But then again, that's also Twitter. All right, here we go. Hello, and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where, you know what? At least Christopher Nolan tried. Somebody had to see what would happen if Hollywood released a major blockbuster during this pandemic. And now we know. What do we know? Well, that's what we're going to break down today in Movie Math. So yes, Christopher Nolan, so close to greatness, yet so far. Despite stories of people driving hours to the closest open movie theater, I'm sure you saw that. Everyone in Los Angeles was like, I'm going to drive to Vegas. And then at the last minute, San Diego theaters opened, which interestingly is about as far away from Los Angeles as Las Vegas is. Just want to go south or east. But everyone was like, yeah, I'm going to do it. There were stories about people buying plane tickets to fly to different countries so they could see Tenet. And everyone on the internet was screaming that they just couldn't take it anymore and they wanted to go to a movie. Well, now they could. And the opening weekend number for Tenet is 20.2 million. But let me tell you, that number has a lot of asterisks. So Tenet opened on a Thursday, and this is a holiday weekend, so it goes through Monday. So 20.2 million is for 5 days. But it's not actually, because that's actually the number for Tenet for 13 days, because they had all those early access showings. And that also, of course, includes Canada, which in this pandemic has suddenly become its own country when it comes to box office numbers. So that's nice. That's a silver lining. So basically, that means that Tenet isn't that far off, although it's interesting. Maybe they shouldn't have done all those early access screenings, because it's like what happened with like Love, Simon. They were like, everybody come see it early. And then there was nobody left to see it when it actually opened. But still, it's not like Warner Brothers lost those numbers. That's in the 20.2. It still only got them to 20.2. So that means, basically Tenet is unofficially in its second or even third weekend. So it means it's not that far off from New Mutants and Unhinged. So that means that's the size of the audience that's willing and able to go to the movies right now. What's more, overseas, in countries where Tenet is officially in its second weekend, it didn't have particularly strong holds, which means mostly everyone who's willing or can go went the first weekend. So that means if there's any real money left on the table for Tenet theatrically, and we're only at 20.2 domestically, that's it. It will probably be when New York, LA, and San Francisco movie theaters reopen, which is expected maybe to be around the end of the month. But having waited so long already to see the movie, will those moviegoers in those big cities at that point just be willing to wait for streaming? And we still don't know what the theatrical window will be. Will Warner Brothers stick to the traditional 3-month window, or will they step it up? I think they're going to wait until we'll talk about Wonder Woman in a moment, which I've been told from my sources is moving, like 90% likely to move, and I think it'll move this week. So I think they're going to want to see what happens. I think Warner Brothers will want to see what happens when New York, LA, and San Francisco open, and see if there's like some big, huge, wonderful pocket of moviegoers. And then when they have those, when they actually see what they're dealing with, then they'll make a call on what to do with streaming, and I think the rest of the year. And again, nobody knows for sure when New York and LA and San Francisco will open, but I think there's so much pressure on them. I do believe it'll be probably around the first weekend in October. Now, you might be like, just in time for Wonder Woman? Well, hold that thought. We'll get to it in a moment. But first, I want to point out that New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco are Christopher Nolan's sweet spot, full of the type of audience likely to enjoy a movie that even his most ardent fans are calling his hardest to follow yet. They're like, it takes 2 to 3 showings to understand it. And you're like, what? I risked my life to see it once. Now you want me to do it 2 to 3 times? I think it'll do very strong repeat business on streaming. But then again, will it be available for rent or purchase? That's another discussion. Because, with Mulan, once you pay that $30, you can watch it as many times as you want. So anyway, by the way, with the big moviegoers benched, Tenet ended up getting hit with a B cinema score, Nolan's lowest since The Prestige. Now, I don't know if it would have raised the cinema score number or not, but we don't know. It's an interesting question. Now, I told you, I tweeted out late last week that I was hearing Warner Brothers is planning to move Wonder Woman 1984 and Dune, most likely shifting their release dates. Wonder Woman closer to the end of the year, Dune heading to 2021. But they still have that trailer coming out. It's actually on Wednesday, September 9th. So it's just a teaser, though. But, it's tough once you start your advertising campaign. Anyway, I believe that's not only because of low turnout for Tenet, but because Warner Brothers isn't going to open Wonder Woman 1984 against their own movie, Tenet, which at that point will only be hitting the big cities. They're like, we don't want to give people a choice as to what to see when New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco come online. We want them to go see Tenet. Now it'd be like, oh, well, I already missed Tenet. I'm just going to skip immediately to Wonder Woman 1984. Ironically, Tenet needs more time. And to be honest, I do believe that Tenet will do its best business when it finally does hit streaming. But who knows what that business will be? I mean, to their credit, Warner Brothers did release these disappointing box office numbers. They didn't have to. I mean, other people could have guessed, basically, because there are other parties involved, like the theaters. But who knows how Bill and Ted 3 did at theaters this weekend, because Orion isn't telling anybody. And they have not reported Bill and Ted 3's PVOD numbers for 2 weeks now. 2! But we can all see with our eyes that it's only its second weekend, it's not even number 1 on iTunes anymore, or even number 2. Uh-oh. In fact, no major studio has released their PVOD numbers except for Universal with Trolls World Tour, and even they never gave us an update after that initial sexy headline. How much did Trolls World Tour end up making in the long run? Nobody knows. Mulan is trending at the top of Disney+. It's basically like in a photo finish with The Simpsons. The Simpsons, Mulan. The Simpsons, Mulan. But it's up there. And what do you know? They did fix their refresh on the trending part of their app just in time for Mulan. But anyway, we'll talk about Disney+, of course, at the end of the stream, at the end of Movie Math, as we always do. But here, don't expect Disney to release any numbers on Mulan until their next quarterly report, unless the numbers are like Trolls World Tour good. They could release the numbers, but I think don't count on it. But another way you'll be able to tell if Mulan is a hit on Premier Access? If Disney starts announcing more Premier Access titles. I already told you that they were considering Black Widow. I told you before anybody else that Disney was considering putting these big movies on their streaming service, and they are. So we'll see what they do with Black Widow. But even before that, I think Soul, as now other people are saying, is a strong candidate as well. The bigger question is what will Disney do with its Fox titles? Will they, for instance, The Kingsman was just moved to 2021. But will Disney throw a bone to movie theaters and keep their upcoming Fox movies as theatrical-only releases? Or try to really make Disney Plus blow up? They're like, oh, look at this. Every week we have a new movie for $30. Or maybe they could play around with the price a little bit. But, wouldn't you love to be able to watch Death on the Nile at home? I'm curious, what upcoming Disney and Fox releases would you pay the Premier Access fee for? I know Mulan had some other issues. Now, there's already some talk also that with such small box office numbers, movie theaters might not even be able to afford to stay open, even if movies are being released. One of you reached out to me privately on DMs on Twitter who manages a movie theater and told me something very interesting, that his theater made more money renting out whole auditoriums to private groups for older movies, which only require 2 employees to run, rather than new releases, which require a lot more overhead from the theater itself. And there are no big releases coming until Wonder Woman 1984, which again, I'm telling you, I've heard from my sources, will most likely move. So even if the studios are trying to give the movie theaters fare, it might not even be worth it for the theaters to stay open. Now back to Tenet. It's currently at $150 million to date worldwide, $30 million opening in China, which is considered low as well. Tenet needs about $500 million to break even, thanks to a $200 million budget. Whew, Christopher Nolan. And basically 2 advertising campaigns. They had to run the first campaign, stop it, and then start up all over again. Right now, the industry thinks that it might be able to get to $300 million theatrically. Uh-oh. I mean, maybe we can blame Labor Day weekend, when nobody during normal times has ever wanted to go to a movie. So of course, we'll have to see what Tenet's second weekend drop looks like. But so far, New Mutants fell 60% in its second weekend, while Unhinged has dropped 35% in its last 2 weekends. This is some scary movie math, but I gotta tell you, when this pandemic ends, and it will end, the Spanish flu took about 2 years. And I'm confident that once this is over, everything will bounce back right to where it was. Perhaps even stronger, because people will be so eager to get out. As people have been remembering, and I find this fascinating, the Roaring 20s came right after the pandemic, the Spanish flu pandemic, because everybody was sick of staying at home. And so they went out and partied for a decade. I think I'm down for that. If we all make it through these 2 years, let's have a great big party after that. So I think movies and movie theaters will be just fine. Personally, I think the studios should use this time to supercharge their streaming services. I think Disney's Premier Access for Disney Plus is a good idea to keep Hollywood and big movies alive during this period. Imagine how they'd be able to boost subscribers for HBO Max if these big movies were available there. I think they'd have to bring HBO Max's price point down a little bit. It's too high. At $12, that's on sale. It's $15 normally, with an additional price for movies. Remember how cheap Disney Plus is as well. Some people are complaining about that. You know, you have to pay for the Premier Access and the subscription, but it's half the price of Netflix and HBO Max when HBO Max isn't on sale. So you have to keep that in mind as well. But yeah, this HBO Max is lagging in terms of subscribers. It's like 190 million for Netflix, around 50 something for Disney Plus, and around 27 for HBO Max. I think that even also includes HBO, and not just, some titles that are HBO Max only don't go to that full 27 million. So HBO Max needs the boost, and Warner Brothers does have these big movies. Now, unless, of course, New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, when they reopen, maybe that will be a game changer. We have to see. And also, you can say that Hollywood needs a superhero movie, but I think Nolan is definitely a superhero director for Hollywood. His movies, during normal circumstances, gross very high, particularly these kind of, blockbuster films. Like this should have performed closer to an Inception, although it does not have a Leonardo DiCaprio star, to be fair. But I think Robert Pattinson, who of course has been following the Leonardo DiCaprio playbook, is pretty close. Maybe Christopher Nolan got him a little bit too early. Maybe he should have gotten him post-Batman. All right, we're all hoping, of course, for a speedy recovery for Robert Pattinson. All right, so as for what people are streaming, over on iTunes, Ryan Phillippe continues to deliver as a conservative action hero, taking the #1 spot with a movie that was very reasonably priced, both available for purchase and rent. While Irresistible became available to rent and shot to #2. And again, Bill and Ted 3, in only its second weekend, has dropped to #3. And it's nice to see 42 still in the top 10, and 42, by the way, also hit theaters this weekend in honor of Chadwick Boseman. On Disney Plus, again, they fixed their refresh problem in time for Mulan, and I was very happy to see the original Mulan pop into the top 10 as well. I checked it out myself this weekend. I think I do miss the songs. I think that while I appreciate what they did with the live-action Mulan, I think they would have had something at the level of Aladdin if they'd managed to get everything in there. I mean, let's see what China delivers. This was all done to appease China and to get some huge number out of their box office, so let's see if it works. 2015 Cinderella just hit Disney Plus as well. A nice consolation prize to those who want to watch a Disney live-action remake but don't want to pay $30 to do so. And on Netflix, I can't believe it, Hilary Swank's Away actually unseated Cobra Kai, although Cobra Kai has turned into a huge hit for Netflix. Get ready for season 3. It's going to be big. Netflix original movie Love Guaranteed debuted at #3, but Charlie Kaufman's I'm Thinking of Ending Things couldn't crack the top 10. That's an awards play, though, and we'll see if it's able to compete. Netflix has so many awards contenders this year, I don't know if I'm Thinking of Ending Things can even be competitive there. It's also worth noting that The Boys Season 2, oh boy is it worth noting, this is some good drama. So The Boys Season 2 debuted its first 3 episodes on Friday on Amazon Prime, and as I predicted, the show's new weekly release schedule is a problem. A lot of you felt that I was making too much of it. Oh, I was right on the money. Because what do you know? The show was hit with so many one-star reviews. 49% of its reviews are 1 star now, that it dropped to 2.7 stars overall. Hopefully, Amazon relents and releases the rest of the season, or at least 2 more episodes instead of just 1 this coming Friday. They have 3 out, there's only 8 in total, and people just are not happy about having to wait. You might be like, why do people get so upset about this, Grace, but not about Doom Patrol and Harley Quinn? That's because nobody watches Doom Patrol and Harley Quinn. They're on much smaller platforms, and also they started out as weekly releases, where The Boys has changed its release strategy. The first season was a binge, and now it's changed to weekly. So I think that's also a problem. We'll see what Amazon decides to do in response to this, because the audience has been quite vocal. They hit them very, very hard. Very hard. Very hard. Did you give The Boys a 1-star review? I'm curious. All right, so as for this coming week, it's pretty light, as Labor Day weekend saw so much content drop. And of course, next Friday is also September 11th. Woke debuts on Hulu Wednesday, September 9th. But don't worry, right after this coming weekend, things will go right back to where they were, with a lot of content dropping. So what have you been watching? And where have you been watching it? And also, what do you think Hollywood should do about movie theaters and releasing films after Tenet's debut? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.